Let's talk about a name that's basically synonymous with the blues, Robert Johnson. I mean, if you know the music, you know the name. But he's so much more than just a musician. He's a ghost, a myth, a foundational pillar for pretty much all modern music. So, let's unpack the story of the man who became an absolute legend.
It's a really good question, right? How does that even happen? Well, for Robert Johnson, the answer is this wild mix of terrible tragedy, insane dedication, and a story so big, so powerful, that it's kind of hidden the truth for almost 100 years.
29. That's it. That is the total number of songs Robert Johnson ever recorded. Just this tiny handful of tracks laid down over 2 sessions back in the 1930s. And yet, these 29 songs, they basically became the instruction manual for the blues, for rock and roll, and for generations of musicians who came after.
Okay, so this is the story everyone knows. Yeah, the legend of the Crossroads. A young man, desperate for talent, meets some dark figure at a deserted crossroads at midnight, and boom, he trades his immortal soul to play the guitar like no one else on earth. It's a fantastic tale, for sure, but you know what? It's not where his story really begins. To get to the real story, we've got to go back, way back, before the legend, before any talk of the devil, back to a time when Robert Johnson was just a young man with a guitar who, frankly, wasn't very good at playing it.
Listen to this. It's a direct quote from the master himself, Son House, one of the greats of Delta blues. See, in the early days, when Johnson would try to play in the juke joints around Robbinsville, Mississippi, he was seen as an amateur. His playing was just an irritation, driving away audiences and really annoying the real musicians.
The big turning point for Johnson wasn't anything supernatural. It was something absolutely heartbreaking. In 1930, his young wife, Virginia, died during childbirth, and their infant child died right along with her. That kind of devastating loss seems to have been the thing that just pushed him off the path of a settled life and straight toward his music.
So after that tragedy, Johnson left the sharecropping life behind, and he never looked back. He became what they call an itinerant performer, a rambler. He traveled all over the Delta, playing for tips on street corners and in juke joints, and just fully committed himself to the life of a bluesman.
And this is where the mystery really kicks in. Johnson just disappears for about a year or so, and when he comes back, the amateur who was noising at best is suddenly a virtuoso. So how did that happen? Was it really a deal with the devil?
This is the myth in its most famous form. It's a powerful image that has absolutely captivated listeners for decades. But the truth of Johnson's transformation is, in its own way, just as remarkable.
So you've got this direct contrast. The legend offers a simple, supernatural explanation. But the reality? It's a story of human connection, of mentorship, and an almost unbelievable level of dedication. Okay, so here's the absolute key. Johnson didn't find the devil. He found a teacher. He sought out a master guitarist named Ike Zimmerman. And to avoid disturbing Zimmerman's family in their tiny house, the two of them would go to a nearby cemetery every single night, sit on tombstones, and practice until dawn. That was his real Crossroads, a quiet graveyard where he put in thousands of hours of intense, focused work. So when Johnson came back to the Delta, his old critics were just stunned. The sound he had developed was so complex, so full, it just didn't seem possible that it was all coming from just one man and one guitar. And this quote just perfectly illustrates the effect of his music. Decades later, when Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones first heard Johnson's records, his trained ear couldn't comprehend that it was a solo performance. He was convinced it had to be 2 guitarists. So how did he do it? Music experts call it micro-orchestration. He was basically a one-man band. With his thumb, he's playing a driving, rhythmic bass line. At the same time, with his fingers, he's playing chords and fills. And then he uses a slide to add this third melodic layer that sounds like a ghostly human voice. 3 distinct parts, all played at the same time. It's just mind-blowing. Now, this revolutionary musician, who had literally worked himself to the bone to get that sound, would die in total obscurity. His legend and his influence would only begin to grow decades after he was already gone. Johnson died in 1938. He was just 27 years old, and the story goes that he was poisoned by a jealous husband at a juke joint. His death made him the tragic very first member of the infamous 27 Club, that group of iconic musicians who all died at that same young age. And this timeline really shows just how long that road to fame was. He dies in 38.
It takes over 20 years for his first album to even be put together and released. But when it is, it lands like a bomb, especially in England, and it sparks a whole musical revolution. It would take over 50 years for his full body of work to be recognized with a Grammy. And who was listening? Oh, just some of the biggest names in music history. Eric Clapton called him the most important blues singer that ever lived. The Stones pretty much built their sound on his rhythms. Robert Plant said that without Johnson, there would be no Led Zeppelin. He was the teacher's teacher.
And here's the ultimate irony, right? The story of the deal with the devil, it's not true. But that dark, romantic, and alluring myth is what drew countless people in. It kept his name alive. The legend became the vehicle that delivered the truth of his genius to the world. So, it leaves us with this fascinating question. Robert Johnson's reality is relentless practice and dedication in a cemetery. His legend is a supernatural pact at a crossroads. One is true, the other is timeless. So which one really matters more? Which story do we choose to tell?